30 firms, and it's dedicated to growth and equity. And tech talent is essential to both of those things. On the growth side, Cortex's mission is to bring new jobs with a focus on biotech, IT, and advanced manufacturing to St. Louis. Our other two missions address the equity side. It's to grow tax revenues to support essential public programs in the city, in the state, in the public schools. And it's to become the most inclusive innovation district in the country. One of the great, we can do more. There's a long way to go. But as I look around the room and I look around the Venture Cafe, we've clearly made progress and we clearly have farther to go. Tech talent is essential to Cortex's growth mission, and it's essential to Cortex's inclusion mission. Every firm in the country is looking for tech talent. Every firm that we recruit to St. Louis asks, can I find tech talent here? It is a significant barrier of competition, and frankly, it's a barrier that we have trouble meeting in many cases. There's far more to do than we've achieved. And if we achieve it, more firms will locate here and more firms will grow here. So it's good for growth in the region. But tech jobs are also very useful in other, more inclusive ways in terms of equity. The tech sector is big. There's enormous demand for jobs in the tech sector here and across the country. The jobs pay very well, and in many cases they do not require they do not require a higher educational degree. So they are a superb target to generate economic mobility. And we'll hear about those efforts in those conversations. So what I want to argue is that today's conversation, some of us are concerned predominantly about growth, some of us are predominantly concerned about equity. But this is a case where we can do both. We can grow the pie and we can create opportunities for people who have not gotten a very big slice of that pie to get a bigger piece of the pie. And that's the reason I'm here today. That's why when people ask me to do this, even though I played tennis on Thursday nights at 6 o'clock, I said this was a good way to spend my evening with you all. So let me introduce our panel. I'm going to play the role of moderator. Trina Clark James, raise your hand. Mary Louise Helbig, and Jeff Mason. Trina is the Regional Director of Empower St. Louis. Empower creates pathways to economic prosperity by providing free IT training and paid internships to young adults age 18 to 25 from under-resourced communities that will support them in launching fulfilling and family-sustaining digital careers. Prior to Empower, she was the founder and CEO of Jama Learning Center, a community charter public school. Mary Louise is the executive director of ITEN. ITEN is a nonprofit in its 11th year supporting tech entrepreneurs in the successful launch of new ventures. Their entrepreneur education programs have served almost 1,000 startups and are currently utilized by 200 active companies. ITEN companies have created over 1,500 jobs, currently generate $42 million in annual payroll, and the Mock Angel program graduates have raised over $200 million in funding. Jeff Mazer is the executive director of Launch Code, a nonprofit that builds the tech workforce by providing free training and job placement to driven individuals. Jeff previously served as senior advisor to Missouri Governor Jay Nixon and is Executive Director of the Missouri-Kansas affiliate of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. And I am delighted that within the last few months, Washington University has become a partner of Launch Code and have hired the first 3 or 4 of what I expect will be many more Launch Code graduates in IT. Okay, you've heard enough from me, now you're going to hear from them. I'd like to start out for a question to all 3 panelists, starting with Trina. Can you provide us a success that you've experienced as part of your organization's efforts to train and support IT talent in the St. Louis community?
So first, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. This is a very important conversation that we're having, and I'm glad that there's so much interest in making sure this kind of conversation and the action that needs to take place after it is happening. So first, I would just say, Empower, we are part of a
Hello? Empower is part of a national nonprofit organization. We're based out of New York City. We've been providing IT training and paid internships as well as professional development and career services to young adults since about the mid-2000s in New York, but we are relatively new to the St. Louis market, so we've been here for a little under 3 years, and our first success is just, I'm really proud to say we have an alumni base of approximately 155 young adults who have come through our program and are now on their path to economic prosperity by having digital careers. I want to share just maybe a couple of specific success stories out of that alumni base. One is a young woman that I was so proud of today. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Regional Business Council, RBC, and we have been supported by them since our entry into the St. Louis market, and so attended their annual board meeting today and was so proud of this young woman who is only 21 years old, came to us as a 19-year-old back at the beginning of 2018, having just graduated from high school the year before, and attempting to pursue the traditional 4-year college degree, but life happened and she found herself back here from Missouri State and found our program. And so this young woman with just 1 semester of college under her belt, and not even in technology, she had gone originally to pursue nursing, I learned, as she shared with the RBC board today, went through our 6-month program, began with the first 16 weeks that is free Monday through Friday training in technology as well as professional development, those soft skills we all know are just as critical as the tech skills. Went on to secure the very first internship that we were able to have at MasterCard. And this 19-year-old at that time, young woman who only had like 16 weeks of tech training behind her belt, was so inquisitive that she helped them discover a vulnerability in their systems that had them want to convert her into full-time employment with a title of associate engineer in IT corporate services, making over $50,000 a year. So like she really represents what we're all about. And so I have plenty of more stories like that, but just knowing that there is so much untapped potential in some of our most distressed communities, and a college degree unfortunately is just not available to everyone, or at least not initially. Being able to get into your career, possibly have a company that can do tuition reimbursement so you can still pursue your degree, but that should not be a barrier like so many of our young adults in our most under-resourced communities are finding, for them being able to have truly productive and rewarding careers.
Trina, why don't we go to Jeff, because he's also in the training business, and then I will ask Mary Louise to talk about supporting IT talent.
Sure.
Thanks, Hank. And I think Trina did a great job talking about the impact that programs like these can make on individual lives. It's a story of a particular person. I want to talk a little bit about the impact that we've seen we're able to make with regard to the employer side of the equation. We know, as we talk about regional problems that Hank alluded to during his introduction, that this is a huge problem from an economic growth standpoint. We look and we see every year in, year out, in the software development space that we work in at LaunchCode here in the St. Louis region, the St. Louis Community College annual State of the Workforce report says there's about 10,800 job openings posted for positions like these. And at the same time, over the same period, there's about 580 degrees granted in computer science, 4-year degrees from institutions in the region. And you can pretty quickly see why this is a big problem and why we're going to need lots of strategies, including like the ones that are applied at Empower, like the ones that are applied at LaunchCode. And our view is that to the degree we're going to solve that problem, we're going to do it by providing solutions that really make sense for employers so that they can develop genuinely new and robust pipelines of junior talent to start to fill this gap. So I'll also use the MasterCard example. MasterCard has been a great partner for LaunchCode, and over the course of the last few years, as that partnership has grown, we've placed, I think, 71 or 72 people into junior developer roles at LaunchCode. And this universe of folks looks different than the software developer universe writ large looks. I think the group is about 72% female that we've placed there. At MasterCard, it's, I think, roughly 50-50 people of color. It's about 12 or 13% people who self-identify as LGBT. And so you see a program like this that's able to do a few things. One, it's able to actually, in meaningful numbers, move the needle for an employer that has really profound, deep needs in the tech talent space in a way that's reliable, in a way that they're going to be able to continue to exploit over the long term. And it's doing what Hank talked about before, which is finding ways to open the top of the funnel to these careers to a much wider range of people than we've seen over history through the traditional skilling programs. So I think I would point to relationships like that one at MasterCard, other employers here in the region that have similar stories to tell. Express Scripts, 130 plus people who have been hired to do this work at LaunchCode, from LaunchCode over the years. Boeing, now in the range of 80 people who they brought into their organization through LaunchCode. So strategies like these, I think, are really critical, and we can see success stories like that, certainly at the individual level, which are critical, but also at the employer and corporate level as
So
well.
what's the average salary a year out of people you place?
Sure. So the average salary for people just starting, just post conversion, is about $53,000 or $54,000 a year. The growth curve is pretty steep for people once they have 12, 18, 24 months of experience. You'd expect those people to be earning $75,000, $85,000 a year pretty quickly once they've developed a little experience in the space.
Louise, tell us about how you support IT talent and IT talent in the region.
Sure. So we do not do technical training like Trina and Jeff offer in their organizations. But what we are is an entrepreneur support organization. We're focused on tech startups. So anybody that has innovative, scalable tech across industry sector. And our programs and services are offered free to entrepreneurs. So if they have an idea in their head, they might have a prototype, they might have a product, they can come to us, and through our educational programs and services, we help them commercialize and turn their idea into a successful new venture. I'm sandwiched by two people who are critical community partners for us, to us, with us. We cross-refer each other's members, students, clients to one another. So, when people talk about an ecosystem, we're doing this together, and we need each other to do this. When you talk about a success story in relation to tech and tech education, we do it more on the entrepreneur side, right? So we don't teach coding. But if someone comes to us and they're a business person, they have a great idea, it's tech related, but all of a sudden they're going to stand up a business. They might be a very accomplished business person in their own right, but starting a business and running a business is very different than holding a position in a company. And so what we do is we educate them. Some have said we give them their mini MBAs about what it's really going to take to validate their concept and stand up a successful venture. And when we think about our kind of successes that we've had, most recently, some of you may have read the story about Rivet, which is a tech startup based here. They're in the construction sector, and they basically develop a platform to integrate different software solutions to manage large-scale construction projects. Tom came to us with an idea. He worked with us education program-wise to validate his concept and set up that business, stood up that business, went through our investor readiness program training, launched his company and his platform, and it was in the news just 2 weeks ago that he raised $3.5 million from investors, which is significant and a great accomplishment. And better yet, they were all St. Louis-based investors. So very exciting story about standing up tech businesses here. that really can build and bolster our community. When we talk about ITEN, we talk about being an economic impact organization. We measure jobs, revenue, things like that. But also, again, the sandwich story here. So recently, one of Jeff's graduates came to us, graduated Jeff's program, and she started developing an app for a food truck business. And so she came over from Launch Code. I met her at a Launch Code session, and she is now a member of ITEN because she wants to start her own company. So she's got the coding skills and experience from Launch Code, and then if we can work with her and help her stand up a successful business and create more great jobs for other people in our community, it's a win-win for everybody.
Okay, just a note for format. I'm gonna ask a couple of more questions of each panelist. It will probably take till 6:05 or 6:10, and then I'll make sure there's 20 minutes for questions from the audience. So just give me about 15 more minutes, and then, but if you have questions, start thinking about asking them. Okay, so Trina, you're training non-traditional candidates. You're clearly having success. What can the St. Louis community do to support your program?
So we have really had a warm reception from the employer community, I'll say, from small, mid-sized companies to major global corporations. But there are still some challenges for a non-traditional candidate. There are honestly still a few companies out here who, while there are some decision makers even who are of the mindset that in order to meet those numbers that Jeff was speaking about, you're not going to be able to just keep going to colleges and recruiting college degree individuals. But unfortunately, it's still like it's very pervasive within their overall company's kind of thinking and philosophy that you need a college degree. So we're really still trying to do a mindset shift within some of the employers here in the St. Louis area to recognize that there's so much untapped potential, and there are actually better trained and prepared to just jump in and learn what you need from someone to do than to come with, and I'm a college graduate, so I'm not bashing college, but that's a lot of theory you learned there. I felt like everything I learned there, I still had to relearn what I needed to do on my job when I got there. So really just giving someone a chance who has demonstrated that they are smart, they're able to pick up skills, and that you train them, that you will develop them into a very loyal and valuable employee for yourselves. Another challenge I'll just say is that because for us, we are training, providing foundational IT skills training. And so what we're learning is that a lot of those entry-level IT jobs, like a help desk analyst or a junior network administrator, those are being outsourced a lot. And it's not necessarily just outsourced like overseas, but we have a lot of employers here who might have their centralized IT infrastructure services somewhere else within the country. So that's the challenge, us just trying to find more ways to have our young people jumpstart their career so they eventually will become the next, app developers or cybersecurity analysts. But we've had a lot of success. There's still a lot more work for us to do in order to either change some mindsets as well as identify different entry points than traditional entry-level IT jobs.
Same question. What can we do to better help your work and broaden your impact?
Yeah, so we are a nonprofit.
I did know that.
Actually, I'm most interested in answers that don't involve
okay.
Visa cards from people
Yeah,
in the room, but of course, they'll be happy to hear
Okay,
that.
all right. Now, I think one of the biggest things right now for us is we have a very robust network of mentors and entrepreneurs and residents who are like our power mentors, ready and waiting in the wings. I would really like to see the business community get more involved with us, and we do have a corporate innovation program. And the way that can happen is our entrepreneurs come to us and they have an idea or they have a product they want to pilot. The opportunity to really work with a potential customer early on is absolutely important and critical. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to be a large, huge corporation. But if you're a business, small, medium, or large, and you're willing to work with our entrepreneurs and potentially, if they're really, really early stage, it might be some mentoring, but it could be product testing, or it could be piloting, or becoming a first customer. If we can do that for our startups earlier on, that will help us make sure that we have more successes and stand up more successful businesses. Someone once said, if you have an idea and a laptop, you could start a tech company, and unfortunately that's kind of true. And what happens is a lot of times people have an idea and they build something without doing the customer validation and discovery process, and they jump way ahead of themselves. So we need more help for our startups in that phase.
Jeff?
Same question?
Yep.
All right, let me first echo and amplify Trina and then Mary Louise. I think what Trina says is really true about the way we approach hiring and bringing tech talent into the space is a key place for the business community to support the work of LaunchCode and all of our work in that way. I think we really, like as a region and as a community and as an economic entity, have to grapple with the question of who gets to be the gatekeepers for this space and what are the standards by which someone gets to enter the space of tech careers. I think for an awful long time, the answer was pat and it was rote and it was driven by people who just wanted to make it easy for people in the human resources space, right? You want to do this kind of job, you have to have this degree and move on down the line if you don't have it. I think really pushing back on that idea, and a lot of companies have, but a lot of companies have a long way to go in that regard. And I think that sort of transformation to one where instead of credentials, we're focused on skill, we're focused on the quality of work that someone brings to the job, to the degree that we start to focus on those things rather than credentials and traditional notions of where I was educated and how I learned, that we're really gonna start to open up this space in a way that is required if we're gonna move forward, if we're gonna advance the causes of equity, and we're really gonna draw down the gap. So that's the first thing I'd say. And if you have influence on that space, and you may have influence without even knowing it, you should be trying to exert that influence by saying to people in your company, hey, how do we hire people who do software development? Do we require that somebody have a year of experience before we bring them into the company? Have we hired launch coders? Have we hired from Empower? And if they're hemming and hawing, instead of answering those questions, then push further, because those are ways that we open up doors to new places where these people can flow in and we start to draw down the gap. The second piece, on a more kind of what can you do for LaunchCode specifically, I look around and I see great examples. If you are someone who's in a position to hire, come and talk to me or talk to Claire or talk to Crystal, my colleagues in the audience here, about what you need to do to bring launch coders into your company. There's lots of talented people there who may not have traditional backgrounds, but have a high degree of drive, high degree of passion, and they've got skill that we've provided. I see my friend and neighbor, I can't remember your name, I'm sorry buddy, that lives right around the corner from us up in Fountain Park neighborhood, who just tonight said, hey, I know you guys are bringing on new tech fellows, people who help run your programs, your learning programs. I'm gonna try and be involved with that. That's a great way. If you're a software developer who's been working for a year or 2 years or 5 years and wanna find ways to continue to grow your skills, to bring other people along in the community, to give back a little, to earn a little money on the side, to get professional development, you can do that stuff at LaunchCode. It's an experience for people to learn, even if they've been in the space, and they may do that learning by teaching other people. So that's a great way to be involved. And then I think the other piece is word of mouth, right? If you know people who are in your community, your family who is sort of stuck in low-wage, part-time work, not able to really get on a career path, tell them about LaunchCode. We've got applications open right now for our LC 101 program, for our Coder Girl program. These are opportunities that are free, that are accessible, delivered in the evening, part-time, in the classroom, so that you have an opportunity to build these skills and transcend a lot of the barriers that ordinarily keep people out of getting those skills and out of this industry. Those are ways that you can help LaunchCode.
Okay, so battery might die. Okay. Push the button on that. Okay. No luck. I'll talk loud. Okay. This is the dream part. You've all run successful initiatives. You've all worked hard. You've all added great value to the St. Louis region, to certain, and particularly to disadvantaged populations, but to the region as a whole. And we're all better off for having you here. So we all owe you great things, each of you. But we're not doing enough as a region. The numbers that Jeff cited, there's a huge gap between demand and supply in this marketplace, and we're not doing enough to offer particularly disadvantaged populations opportunities in this space. So I want you to dream for a second, and the only unacceptable answer, because we know you believe this, is to double my program. So that, we know that. What are we not doing as a region that we could do that would really increase tech talent and particularly draw more people who need those high quality jobs into the region? Is there something we're not doing as a region? Any of you?
I'll go.
Gotta talk loud.
Yes, I'm
'cause-
from a big family.
Because in this high-tech
Yeah,
cortex
yeah.
world, we can't
Our
manage to have a
batteries ran
microphone.
out. Solve battery problem. I think that, we need to reach out broader geographically. And what I mean by that is, I feel very confident that people and organizations from downtown to Cortex, are aware of what's going on in tech and innovation and entrepreneurship. But I'm amazed sometimes when I drive out west and I get near 270 or beyond. ITEN's been around 11 years. We've touched a lot of people and a lot of startups and people that are in the tech space and they've never heard of us. So I feel like there's this geographic kind of cluster that is very strong and tight, but that's not necessarily good. And so I'd like to see us be and act more like a region. And I don't know the answer to how to do that exactly, but.
Just as a fact, so I think many of you know, the area you've described, which is the city, is 11% of the population of the St. Louis region. Trina, do you have an idea? Do you have a moonshot idea?
Look,
That's like a very high pressure. I will say something kind of along those lines, and it's not necessarily maybe anything that anyone in this room can do, but it is a real barrier. And so thinking about, just how vast our region really is, for us and the young people that we serve, public transportation is not strong here. And so because there are so many corporations, companies, just a lot of industry that is outside of how far Metro either goes at all or it's gonna take 2 hours to get there. That's more of a big, that's a big problem to take on, and probably, like I said, it's not necessarily anything that anyone in this room can do directly, but as a region, we do have to try to unify our region through public transportation as well. I think that will open up a lot of access for employees to get to some of the employers that are looking for more tech talent.
Jeff, let me say a ditto on that, but also there's one thing that I think that we need to stop doing. I think, and it's not unique to St. Louis, but I think it happens lots of places. There's this persistent myth that what we really need to do to solve all these problems is simply clarify and give real line of sight and visibility to people, certain subsets of information. That employers need to provide very clear information about what sorts of skills are necessary to do the jobs that they can't fill. That educational institutions or training providers need to have clear line of sight to what those skills are, and that people who are learners or job seekers can have visibility to all those things. And if you provide that, and it's near perfect information in that regard, then all this stuff is going to work itself out, and it will be a nice, neat thing, and everybody's going to find the right place where they get the skills that they need to do the right work, and I think that's hogwash. I think that we can believe in the market, and I do, and we do at LaunchCode, and we subscribe to those principles. But I think what we also need to think about is, if we're really worried about advancing as a region, or as a city, or as a county, or whatever, that we can't be afraid of planning and saying, these are the things that we really have to do. These are the things that we see coming 5 months down the road, 5 years down the road, 50 years down the road, and we have to really think proactively about what we need to invest in and where we need to allocate resources so that we're driving things in that direction. I think that this belief exists that as long as we're providing clarity of information, then people can make decisions that will ultimately get us there down the road. And I think what we've seen is that that's not true. It's not happening, and that we need to be a little more explicit, a little more specific, and a little more collaborative in the way we identify what those needs are, and then work together. What are the programs? This is not simply saying, give me more money for my program pay. What I'm saying is, identify the programs, be they traditional education programs, alternative providers of education, that can do this stuff and do it at scale, and then you start to move those numbers and make it all happen.
Okay, of course, the same point about planning is actually a point that Trina made. We've allowed tremendous growth in employers in places that can't be reached by large numbers of employees. Okay, your hand was up way before the public side, so let's start. And tell us who you are.
My name's Aaron Munzer. I've got a startup. I started with some people I met here, and I also work at Sigma Express Scripts. So I wanted to add something to your ITEN comment. You said a lot of people in the county, St. Louis County, St. Charles County, wouldn't know about these programs. They don't know what's going on. I've got a dad who's worked at Boeing forever, an uncle that's worked at Boeing forever. I bet you $100 they've never heard of ITEN. What could a company like Express Scripts Cigna, a company like Boeing, do to help, to spread awareness and actually be an active participant and bring all their employees into the fold?
Yeah, thank you, and good point, you know, and I think it's inviting us in, you know, I mean, we would be happy to come there, and put on an event, tell everyone what we do, so that if there are people there that are interested in you know, starting a new business, I mean, I know Boeing doesn't want us to steal their employees, but you know, there's people doing side stuff, but also bringing our companies in and showcasing our companies to area corporations. You know, I've worked in the corporate world and the startup world before I got this great job at ITEN. And I know when I see these companies that we're working with, they have new ideas, you know, that it could benefit so many companies right here. And so there's just missed opportunity by not having that information or exposure and knowledge. So if we could come in and do showcases and, you know, whatever in companies, I think that would be a fabulous opportunity, because I think people would be shocked to see what's really happening.
Okay, I would ask that everybody try to keep your questions to 3 or 4 sentences. You set a good model. Start out. Susan?
Yeah, I have another kind of an echo of what you said. I was, still am, I suppose, an engineer, but for 28 years, I had a security clearance and worked on precision guided warheads and millimeter wave technology. I was a pioneer woman in engineering, on radar, and I'm actually pretty much responsible for the fact that we have functional MRI, if anyone knows what that is. So I did a lot, but I don't exactly understand what tech is. And I will say that as far as Boeing goes, many people are required to have a security clearance to work at Boeing, and that might rule out a lot of your employees working at places like Boeing. And another thing is that most of the people I worked with, I was on the JDAM program for quite a while. I was one of the few people who lived in University City who worked at Boeing. Most of them lived way out, and I had no idea where. You generally, except to go to work, I did not go past Big Bend. So that's another thing to consider.
Okay, so
Security clearance.
security clearance issues and how do you define tech? Those are the 2 questions I thought. Let's do the how do we define tech really quickly. Let's go across the table. Trevor?
So actually, I'm gonna say, because I'm an engineer by training, but coming into this space, I don't know if Emma remembers, but I asked her, okay, so what is IT? Because it just feels like it's this big nebulous thing, right? And so she helped me, I think about it in terms of 4 things now. Hardware, software, networking, and data. And so kind of across those, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all talking about, right? There was all this data that we used to type on typewriters and maybe put into an envelope to send somebody in the mail, or there was all this data that we would keep in like notebooks, but we made it where there are devices, whether they're servers, they're laptops, their mobile, services that have data that over a network using software, you know, to drive how they're doing it, sends data to other devices, and then somebody is using that data, having to analyze that data, being data scientists, you know, being able to synthesize hundreds of millions of pieces of data in order to use that to inform business. So the way I've been able to kind of wrap my mind around something that really is very broad, there's probably about you know, tens of different tentacles that you can go in with
Repeat your
because,
four.
because it's not the four are computer hardware, software, networking, like the networks between those hardware devices, and data. So I just wanna.
I think that's a pretty clear answer. We'll come back to the security clearance issue. I want to make sure I get as many questions. Sir?
I have a question just from a small to medium-sized business. One of the challenges, we're not really at the bootstrap stage where, you know, we're generating revenue, what have you, but the challenge that we have is knowing how tech can help us. I mean, we all are sitting around in our meetings and our strategic planning to identify where our pain points are. There are many, always will be. But the key is how can we get connected to where that pain point can be solved through the tech community. And I would like also to be interested in knowing how we can develop, we can be coached and trained on how to develop mentorship programs, because that's not our strength. And if we could be a mentor to your graduates, but we don't know how to do that.
Yeah. So I'll work backwards on the mentoring. So we have a mentoring program, and we manage that so that the volunteers that we have that are subject matter experts, whether they're technical or business kind of functional experts, because we need them all. And then we have basically a platform that matches up the entrepreneur with the mentor based on the need. And then we have programming too, so that gets wrapped around it as well. So we use a business model canvas for structuring sessions and things like that. So we have a framework for that built in at ITEN. I think the thing that you're making me think about is, you know, maybe what we need to do at ITEN is do a community event where we just showcase our companies. We do that with our corporate innovation partners. We do some curated matchmaking. We talk with them about areas of interest, and then we look at our portfolio of companies. We know what stage people are at, what their technology is, and then we get them, we have a showcase event, and then we do this kind of speed meeting, and they sit down and talk for 15 minutes one-on-one, and they figure out there's something there. So it's a curated process.
Ma'am, you're next. I think the hand half up. Yeah, now okay. I got it.
My name is Jessica Tucker. I'm an engineer at MasterCard and a launch code graduate as well. I just have a quick small solution. If you want to get the people who are undeveloped or under-resourced areas, get someone who looks like they're from that area to go into the high schools to start early to bring in that tech talent. We're starting at adult age and older. We have high schools who don't know they can have zero to no debt, zero to maybe $10,000 in debt to get a $65,000 plus job, career with benefits, okay? And they don't know this. They don't know that with some hard work, they could be right here when they turn 18, 19, have companies looking for them. I am one person who's willing to go to these high schools, middle schools if need be, talk to the children who look like me or not, and tell them the possibilities they have that's available in the St. Louis area. Because I'm a launch code graduate, a Clayton Academy graduate, Udacity graduate, like all these places I've been through, and I've spent $0 on my education.
I love actionable. I love people who have suggestions that are actionable. Next, sir.
Good question. I'm just for the patient, I apologize. I have this main wind turbine invention, and I need help with it. And I want to walk through to study it, and kids have a class with it, and I need manufacturing partners. Guys,
Why don't one of us,
what do you guys do to help me?
I think that's a question that's quite individualized, And let's address that afterward. I think any of us are willing to talk to you afterward. But I don't think that, I think I'd like to stay at the policy regional level. Sir?
Hi, I work in workforce development and cybersecurity, and we've noticed that entry level has suddenly become 3 to 5 years. So what can we do as a community to either change that back to the actual definition of entry level, which is basic, or upskill our people to the point where they can enter those jobs at the right time?
I mean, I think we're at a moment in time where we've got to really push full on into that space, because given the reality of the labor market right now with very low unemployment, employers can be made to understand that, hey, I don't actually have the opportunity to bring someone in an entry-level role with 3 years experience. I'm gonna have to hire somebody who just learned their skills, just earn their chops, and bring them in and learn the hard way, or the easy way in many instances, that those people can do that work. So I think the answer is, much like Trina talked about, and I talked about a little bit before, is just demonstrating to employers that it's hard the first time, right? You can bring somebody in who we will evaluate, we will validate their skill and say, yes, this person has what it takes, even though they don't have that 1, 2, 3 years worth of experience. Give them a shot. Use some mechanisms. We use mechanisms with employers to de-risk the process for employers, so that they don't have to go all in on someone before they know what they really have. But we have to use this moment now, before the labor market changes, to demonstrate that for employers, make it clear to them that these people can do this work even though they don't have that 3 to 5 years. And it's absurd on its face anyway.
It's silly.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm supposed to moderate, but this happens to be something that I have, I'm the executive vice chancellor at WashU. I know some, look, lots of rules about experience were a product of an era of much higher unemployment rates, where they managed to keep 200 applications for a job, and they could keep you down to 40 so that one could process them. This is a moment, and it's the best moment in any of our lifetimes, frankly, with unemployment rates this slow, to really drive the question of what skills are necessary, and to do that, it opens up funnels for people who are otherwise caught out. This is the moment, and if you're in a large firm, or talking to large firms, this is the moment to really be pushing inside your company, is where everybody's having trouble with tech talent. That's a universal. It's one of the answers for us to look hard at what people actually need in terms, and I say this, it being in the formal education sector. And I'm a great believer in formal education, but there are things that do not require master's degrees in formal education.
Let me make one other point in the same vein. I think that it's easy for us to talk about employers as monolithic. This is what this big employer thinks, but I think what you find when you get down to it at the granular level is, yes, you may have people who are in the administrative space, in the human relations realm, who are very invested in these rigid notions of who should get in. But as you talk to the people who lead the teams who actually have to do this work, these people don't care, right? They're just like, give me somebody who can do the work and I'll do it. We can figure out all this other stuff. And so that's the other opportunity, right? To
But
find
it's
those
getting
people who
past
can be
HR.
champions.
Yes.
Well,
Well.
right, but it's much easier for the person who's in-house who can't find the talent to be the one making that case with the HR director than it is for someone from the outside to be doing it, right?
Of course.
Because these people can say, I need this guy on my team now, he can do it. He doesn't look like the people we usually bring in, but let's give him or her a chance in any event. So that's the other strategy.
You're really asking them to change a process that has worked
Yes.
for them for many, 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 many years.
Yes.
And most people don't like change, right? And it worked. So now all of a sudden, we're kind of turning that upside down on them and saying, you can't keep doing it the same way. And it's a rub. But if people were willing to look at it differently, approach it differently, set up different standards for testing even, and requirements versus the former way, I'll call it the old way, but the former way, the results could potentially be a lot better for everybody.
Yeah, and not all fields lend themselves to that way. I don't think anybody in this room thinks we should not require that the doctors we see go to medical school and do the rest of it. Some things don't lend themselves.
Yeah.
But this is a field that lends itself to a more open funnel than some other fields. Other questions, ma'am?
We're both educators, public educators and school leaders, and just to echo what your name? Jessica is so awesome, I want to get your contact. To echo her point, a 12th grader in Missouri, and I started school in Arkansas, only needs 2 credits to graduate. So high school around this country is captive audience, revenue stream going in from state dollars, and really kids sitting around just taking electives. I mean, literally 2 classes. So this could all be in there, paid for, and they've got to be there at school, so.
Thank you. Other questions? Sir, here.
I wanna add to Jessica's question and comment
Actually,
as well.
since you had a question,
All
can
right,
I go
all right.
here first? Everybody gets one shot before you get the second scoop of ice cream? Go ahead.
Well, there's something you mentioned at the beginning that's been kind of sitting in my head, where you mentioned that, bigger maybe Silicon Valley or coastal tech companies have said that there's not enough talent in St. Louis. And I've heard that before, and it always strikes me as sort of, I don't know, just, well, untrue, I guess. I know a lot of people who are senior level engineers that have worked at some of these companies in the past, or could go there, or have received offers there. And the talent is here, and a lot of these people end up working at consulting companies in the area because they pay the best. And, I struggle because Facebook will pay $400 grand for a senior engineer in Silicon Valley. Why won't they pay $200 in St. Louis? They'd be able to vacuum up, tons of talented people for half the price. So it's just sort of an observation.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to have my panelists answer any of this. Since it was directed to me, let me just say a few things. One is, I think it's a problem almost everywhere in the country, the tech talent problem. I think there are very few places that have a very large higher educational institution that produce lots and lots of IT graduates a year. Austin, for example. But I think this is much more, we are not the exception. We are the rule in companies saying that they find it very difficult. It is exactly the case that we are trying to make at Cortex, and I know Steve is trying to make in other contexts, other people in this room, that in fact, you're better off, you have a much better position to large companies if you're competing here, where you're not competing with Facebook and Google, and where the cost of living, that is the next evolution of Cortex, is can we attract firms from the coast on our talent base and on our cost of living? And we'll see how it works. Other thoughts from the panel?
I think when people are saying that there is this need for tech talent, there's not enough tech talent, it's not saying that it doesn't exist at all. It's saying that it's not enough to meet all the needs, and you can see that from how long some of the open ranks exist for particularly, I believe, major companies. And something else that I particularly am seeing, because we do train at that entry-level position, and I would be interested to hear what Jeff's experience has been. But they need more senior people, and if you have like this kind of finite number of people who have been trained also in a specific type of system or software that you're using, people they're either just gonna keep dancing around the same, like 5 people trying to meet the needs of 20 different positions, or they're not gonna move because it's like they're basically entry level to this new place. Anyway, so I think it's about growing the pie is where we're saying that to meet the talent needs. It's not that they just don't exist at all here, it's that we need to be able to have more to meet all the needs and allow for the time that it takes to develop into a more senior level person, and not assume that all the senior level talent is just out here ready to fill all the jobs that are open.
Anything to add?
No, I think Trina said it.
Yeah.
Sir?
So, my name is Nathan Billhard. I'm a Scrum Master at WashU, actually. I have no IT background whatsoever. So my question, I'm actually a launch code applicant. So I'm wondering if, something like launch code is the proper channel to go to bring someone with more of a business project management mindset up to speed in the IT world, or if there's a venue to offer some kind of option for that.
I would say, first of all, as a threshold matter, we're mostly interested in bringing people into our programs who are looking for that first job in technology, right?
Okay, sure.
That said, I think what we see an awful lot is sort of the reverse. We have a number of, dozens of times now, taken people who've gone through our kind of core software program and with a little additional training for 2 weeks, become a Scrum Master. And we do that work for companies like, we haven't done it for WashU, unfortunately, maybe we can. But for MasterCard and Express Script and other companies like that. So I do think it's a valid tool for learning additional technical skills that may serve you well in your career. Whether or not that's what our program is designed to do, a separate question, but I do think it puts you in a place to learn those skills, give you a little better sense for what the people, the developers or engineers that you're maybe managing or working with are dealing with and doing.
Sir?
Along the line of non-traditional applicants, and doing this with these young people who are operating, are there any programs where people who still, despite the unemployment numbers, were displaced with the economic collapse and are still attempting to reach their prior income levels? Let's say we use the AARP eligible, so 50 and up. Are there any programs where folks like that are either, one, getting trained, and whether or not, and don't get me started on HR people, because they have to put commercials on to affirm that they actually have souls. Shram or whatever it is. So, one, I've seen an ad for someone who wanted to be a person who was familiar with an operating system with 3 to 5 years experience for the system that was a year and a half old. So that's the HR mindset. However, are there opportunities for people who want to be retrained, who are a little older and don't want to be Walmart readers? And are there specific training programs that would be similar to what you're doing, but non-traditional?
So the question is there anything for me? Guys?
So we're not focused on particularly on any age cohort at all. I mean, we've placed people in jobs from age 17 to 70 plus. And so, the average launch code participant in one of our programs is probably in their early to mid 30s. So, the fat part of the bell curve with regard to ages, participant age in our programs is really 25 to 40 years old. So we see all the time people who maybe got technical skilling 2 decades ago and they left the industry for whatever purpose, to serve, to start a family, and now the skills that they earned during that program are no longer applicable in today's world. And so they view launch code as a no-cost entry point to get back into the space with fresh skills. So it's not unusual at all. And perhaps a little more common than that is someone who's 29 years old and they got a degree, a 4-year degree. They have $60,000 in debt still, and they're working 2 part-time or low-wage jobs, earning $22,000 a year without the opportunity to take more loans or invest any more to earn a new skill. And so that's a little bit different situation, but it's still someone who is looking for an accelerated, accessible, low or no-cost way to gain a skill quickly that puts them on a path to a new career.
Now you get your second. Do you want the chocolate or the vanilla ice cream?
I'll take chocolate.
Okay.
This is probably a question for Jeff too. I was gonna ask, how are you guys engaging with high schools in the area, especially if you're looking at expanding your footprints? And then Jessica had a great idea. How can you leverage your first and second and third generations of your launch code graduates to be advocates for you guys and to grow the awareness here?
Sure. So, really, it was probably 1.5 years, 2 years ago, we had dealt with this question from time to time, which is, like, hey, what do you guys do for people who are high school age or a little bit younger, since we're a career-focused program? That hasn't been our point of focus. And we said, well, we don't really know. And then a couple things happened. I guess last year, there was a piece of legislation that passed here in Missouri, STEM bill, which made some changes to people could count computer science learning as a credit, a STEM credit towards graduation for their high school diploma. And so that for us opened up an opportunity. So we participated in the committee that put together the curriculum standards. And what we saw, and that process concluded, was that the curriculum standards that were set for that computer science learning by DESE for the state looked an awful lot like the standards that we set up for career readiness in our existing curriculum. So we went to the folks at the Bayer Foundation, and they funded a pilot program whereby basically taking our job-focused curriculum, modifying it slightly so that it meets all the DESE standards, reformatting it into a 2-semester high school program. And now we're in the process of identifying probably 8 to 10 St. Louis area schools, both public, charter, private, that will pilot this program. There's a teacher training component as well, so folks will get up to speed on how to deliver, what the pedagogy is for teaching computer science, and what the skills that are needed are. And hopefully, well, we know that part will start in winter semester 2020, and then by fall semester 2020, those 8 to 10 schools will be deploying for the first time that with at least 12 to 15 students apiece. So it's a small start, but ideally, if that works and we've sanded off the rough edges, we can then take this curriculum that we know is geared both towards job readiness in this market and meets these DESE standards. We can give that to any high school in the state of Missouri that wants to run a program and can't afford to buy Project Lead the Way curriculum or whatever else. It doesn't know how to provide computer science training in that way. So that's a start as to how we hope to leverage our resources into serving a slightly different community.
Would you consider using your first and second generation
Okay,
launch pad
absolutely, no
students to
question.
go to career fairs?
So, sir, you get the last question, and then I'm gonna wrap up.
Okay, so on the subject that we're on, I've just launched After School Labs, St. Louis STL, which is set up to do exactly what you're talking about. We're trying to partner with different corporations like Code and things like that to teach the kids, because we're interactive learning. So we based on the kids actually learning what they're gonna be applying for jobs for. So it's like we partner with that way they can use the credit or they can get certifications. And the reason we're doing after school is because that way we don't waste kids' time with learning stuff that they don't have to. So with where you were saying it would be, if you're interested, you could be a spokesman for us to say that you went through this and this is how things work. And so that's kind of what we're
It's
doing.
critical that people see the pathway from a very young age and they understand, what do I have to do now to learn what I need to do to go to Empower or go to Launch Code or go to university,
Exactly.
right? Visibility is critical.
So, yep.
So, kind of to tie those last two questions together, there are a lot of different coalitions or collaborative efforts in the region around STEM or technology in particular. So I think about STEM STL is really working from pretty much cradle to career readiness, working with school districts, making sure that there is the knowledge of what is out there for early childhood education, elementary, high school. I think about the graduate program that's coming through Nine Network, where they're really looking into not just youth, but adults of any ages. What are those middle skilled jobs and that don't require a college degree, but you can just get this training and you'll be able to get a middle skilled career going. There's a new platform called STL.works that I would encourage everyone to check out that is looking at advanced manufacturing, healthcare, technology, and the trades. And even just being here, the Accenture Group is doing a project called My Future, I'm messing up my path, my future, that is also looking at how do you just provide non-traditional pathways to have a digital career. So there's a lot of different efforts that are happening in this community. Some of them, it probably will be more efficient for them to create more synergy amongst each other, but there's a lot that's happening in order to grow that pie and just have more pathways to go into a digital career.
So it's 6:30. There are a number of questions. We'll be around for a few minutes. Pardon?
Out there, good night, out
Pardon?
there.
I'd like to thank myself. We'll be around, and what I'd particularly like to do is I would be, all of my panel, interested in your thoughts on what we can do further in this space. Thank you.